State Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Great to have you.
Good morning, Hugh. Good to be on with you, as always.
I saw you on NBC Meet the Press this weekend, and I want to play for you something that Devin Nunes said yesterday so I can get your comment on it. Here's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
Can you say categorically that there were no contacts whatsoever between any officials affiliated with the Russian government and the Trump campaign?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. We still have not seen any evidence of anyone that from the Trump campaign or any other campaign for that matter that's communicated with the Russian government.
So, Senator Cotton, would you agree with that? There has been no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians presented to either intelligence committee yet?
Hugh, I want to step back to Manu Raju's question there, which is overbroad, to ask Devin if we have seen categorically there's no evidence is not yet something that I can say or anyone on the Intelligence Committee can say because we're still undertaking our review. But I can tell your listeners that they should not trust stories that are based on anonymous sources, in particular anonymous sources making wild-eyed accusations about the Trump administration. The one thing they can trust in those stories, Hugh, the one thing that you can trust in an anonymously sourced story is the reporter's caveat that contradicts the headline. So, for instance,
interesting.
A couple weeks ago, the New York Times published a big, splashy front-page news story that said the FBI was investigating frequent, repeated, extensive contacts between known Trump associates and Russian intelligence officials. The third paragraph in that story said, so far, no evidence of any such cooperation has appeared. That's the kind of thing you can trust in an anonymously sourced story, Hugh, the lines that contradict the headlines.
You see, that is what I'm trying to get across. I just had a long conversation with Dan Abash on this point. We know, at least I believe, that the FSB used WikiLeaks in an attempt to influence the election, and that the New Yorker piece this week details why Putin hated Hillary Clinton in great degree in detail. But there's no evidence that I've seen yet of collusion, and the conflation of the two is confusing people.
And Hugh, let me take another story, for example. Last Thursday, CNN published a story saying that Reince Priebus asked the FBI to speak to the media to refute that New York Times allegation. Now, I'm not going to confirm or deny anything that was in that CNN story, just like I want the New York Times story. I will say this, though. If you accept everything at face value in the CNN story, in that story, they say the FBI went to the president, they went to the chief of staff, and said these allegations are BS. They're grossly overstated. Well, if that's the case, if you accept that as true, then the story also says that Reince Priebus said, well, are you going to refute this publicly? Isn't that the most reasonable thing in the world?
Yes, it's another non-story. But I watched Hardball.
It's perfectly reasonable for any intelligence agency to tell a new president or his new team who maybe hasn't been in office and doesn't know all of the implications of that kind of request to say, we can't get in the business of calling balls and strikes on the media, in no small part because we don't want the Russians and the Chinese to know what we do know, what we don't know, what our capabilities of knowing things are. But again, if you just take on face value most of what has been reported and you credit the caveats in these stories, there's much less than meets the eye. I mean, it is.
It's underwhelming. It's underwhelming.
It is completely possible to separate, on the one hand, what the Russians do constantly to undermine confidence in the American system of government or to undermine our interest around the world, and on the other hand, some of the wild accusations that people are throwing around about Trump associates during the campaign without really any evidence. All that said, that's why we're undertaking a careful and thorough review in the Intelligence Committee of all the allegations that have been in the media, of some things that are known, like General Flynn's conversation with the Russian ambassador, the hacks into the DNC, into the email of Hillary Clinton's campaign chair, and I think we should let that review proceed, and we'll let the facts take us where they may.
I have great confidence that, indeed, if any bad stuff came out, you would be the first to, when you were authorized, talk about it. and you will look at it objectively. I did not like what I saw on TV last night, which is a rush to judgment and a conflation of stories. While I have you, Senator Cotton, top line number released by the OMB yesterday shows a $54 billion plus up in the DoD accounts. Doesn't tell us if it will be in the overseas contingency operating fund or in the real budget. What do you expect to happen, and is there going to be a supplemental for defense, which I think is a vital need?
Hugh, we're still looking into the numbers and examining all the ways the President's team proposes to spend that money. I will simply say it is a breath of fresh air to be working with the President, who understands that we need to spend at least $54 billion more rather than what we had for the last 8 years, which is a President who was starving our military so he could get more domestic spending. So we'll have a debate in Congress about what the exact number is and how that money should be spent, but it's great to be working in a world in Washington where we have a commander-in-chief who knows that we need to rebuild our military and do so urgently.
Senator Cotton, 15 seconds. Are we going to get some appointees to armed services soon? The Secretary of the Navy designate withdrew yesterday.
I certainly hope so. There's 46 openings to go. 63 million people voted for Donald Trump. Do you think we could find 46 qualified Republicans in that group?
Well said, Senator Tom Cotton. I'll be right back. America, Carmen LaBerge joined. I've got all sorts coming up. Don't do anything.